All right, welcome everybody to our February 2023 meeting of Manhattan Community Board One's Land Use Zoning and Economic Development Committee. I'm Patrick Cannell, chair of the committee. I think co-chair Laura Starr was online or maybe back shortly, and CB1 chair Tammy Meltzer is here as well. Two items on our agenda, which kind of interrelate to one another in some ways. The first is an update on POPs along Water Street, specifically 77 Water and 175 Water, as well as any others that may be under review in the district, to the extent our friends at the Department of City Planning know. And we have reps from ACP joining us
Shortly, as soon as we get the online working.
So Alice, do you want to tee it up?
Sure, for,
For number one.
well,
I have
yeah, it's, is Department of City Planning on though, isn't,
not yet.
not yet? Well,
I have all the Water Street, text amendments, something if you'd like you to pull it up.
no, I don't, I've got it all here also, and here. No, so the first item is what we're looking at to hear from Department of City Planning, and just, this was triggered in part because at 77 Water, I don't know if you all realize, but that is the neighborhood's biggest plaza. And it was a very revered, very well-known landscape by an important landscape architect, AEI. And anyway, a few weeks ago or last month, I had walked by and asked Department of City Planning why there seemed to be work being done in this plaza. And they then followed up to say, well, we're not sure, but it looks like it's as of right. And then last week, I was there on a Saturday and the plaza is now demolished. Everything is gone. Now, when I say plaza, I'm referring to the whole space that's under that building. So 77 Water is the largest one that had the fish, water sources, 4 or 5 sculptures around it. Yeah, and so this was an extraordinary plaza, one of the 4 in the city by the fellow William Kaufman, who's a developer. And the other one you might recall was 200 Water Street, very controversial, that came to this board. And what's interesting about this, and it becomes, as I was telling Patrick earlier today, an incredibly great example to tie into our consideration of thinking of ways to rethink the Water Street text amendment, is that what's happened here is because technically the area, most of the area underneath the building is an arcade, thank you, and not a plaza. It can, as of right, go through its, have its modifications without evidently Department of City Planning or Community Board review. What's very unusual about this is it, of course, was a place that was conceived of as one, with the outdoor spot being the plaza, the indoor or undercovered spot being the arcade. And alas, they've separated the two so that all the space under the arcade is now gone. Not gone, the space isn't gone, the original design is completely gone, as well as all of the art. And so it also leads to a question of what can happen to public art and public places. So that's sort of what 77 Water is about, from why it became, something we wanted to ask for follow-up on. And hopefully, is anybody from, I thought.
I think they were supposed to, but I don't see them currently.
They're the attendees.
No, I have no attendees in, and it could be because it's not working.
Well, I think without their review, I think that's sort of,
Yeah,
I'm happy, I will also share something I wrote up that, shared some correspondence with the Municipal Art Society. Elizabeth Goldstein is also not showing up because she said she was coming also. Okay, well, in any case, I will share this with the committee members so you can kind of get, this is my take, but my interpretation of what's been going on, and see the pictures and sort of catch up. But basically what's happened is that POPs is no longer there and all the art is gone. And how could that happen, right? Without our knowledge and review. So,
That was actually one of the few that I enjoyed.
yeah.
That I honestly.
That's gone?
The entire.
They were renovating it
Well,
to
it's,
make the biggest pool that.
right, but all of the original AEI landscape is gone.
How about the art?
All the art is gone.
I have the.
And the art, by the way, just so you know, the piece you're looking at, it's called The Month of June. I was able to locate in archives, and it's fascinating that John Lennon and Yoko Ono sat on that very piece of sculpture. There's some great pictures, and it inspired them to put it in their film on the Imagine. So that, which was too bad that they didn't know to capitalize on that when they, when they had the pictures. So, yeah, Michael got the money, somehow got money. That, your wife is coming up with that, but, yeah. So anyway, it's a sad day when we don't have any review of these spaces being demolished, and it's an opportunity to maybe reconsider the text amendment.
So our friends from city planning were going to come and explain to us some of the intra-agency differences and who handles what territory and how this more or less slipped through the cracks, but didn't slip through the cracks according to them. I'm not quite sure, but we'd love to hear that explanation. And we're still looking for them. There's some technical glitch with the link tonight, so.
Yep.
You want me to
Mark is
try?
telling me he can't get on.
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, the panelists and community board members who were sent the WebEx invite seem to be okay. It's
Okay, 'cause I can hear you guys.
Oh, hi, Laura.
Hi.
Yeah, I sent it to George, separate email. So you should be able to.
Well,
from that.
You want me to send it to,
Yeah, it's on their website that they were redoing this.
yeah,
Yeah.
but nobody.
Redoing?
Absolutely nobody.
Stage commission, then PFP to
Yeah.
revamp the ground floor. Yeah.
But without any community board review, even though
Right,
we had been
yeah.
asking about it since.
Do we have the
2016.
plans of what they're putting back?
Yeah, you can just go on their website, you can see it. Actually, it's the same.
Whose website? 77 Water?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and the landscape firm is you know them, MML, and the same ones who were doing 25 Water,
Oh, uh-huh,
that group, as I recall.
uh-huh, okay.
But the point of this is that we had no idea this was happening, and nor have we had any review of what was being proposed. So,
Do we have to that's your point, right? Is that if it's a plot, if it's an arcade, we don't, but if it's a plaza, we do?
right, the only things that we have oversight on is the filling in of an arcade, the horizontal enlargement, which is part of the Water Street text amendment, which, you know, arguably is a missing piece to the text amendment, is not to have the ability as a community to be aware of modifications to the arcades, which consent act as plaza. So, you know.
Pretzel? You want a pretzel? Anyone want a pretzel?
Yeah.
They're delicious. Someone on the screen. Maybe we should get 7 on our side. You know what I mean?
Right?
7 on our side.
What's 7 on our side?
Channel 7, Nina Pineda, what are you crazy?
Oh.
Come on.
So folks, if we can,
Who's this?
maybe we're gonna take a timeout, I think, as we
Okay.
try to work through the.
Okay, coach.
If they can,
He's on, but he can't unmute. You got that message? That's George.
is it all right?
Unless
Is it all right if I just send Elizabeth Goldstein my link from
Okay.
WebEx?
And Dorothy.
So she could come in as a panelist if that
so
works.
welcome in Ezra, welcome in George.
Is Elizabeth on?
Well, I don't know. So if nobody's able to join
Goldstein?
unless they're panelist, I could send her mine.
Elizabeth Goldstein's email, and I will get it to her.
Sure, it is
Not-
E.
I don't know if she wants it broadcast to the
Oh.
world. Just forward it to me by email. I'll take care of it.
I love your email, Patrick. I just noticed it. Q's at G, the Q's, that's a
I
good
got
one.
that.
I almost wanted to
Gmail,
make the
like,
Q's
stuff.
too, for my, I use mine personally. Like that.
So Ezra, George, you guys are coming in, there was a problem with the public facing link. So we're trying to continue to work on that, but, we've started the meeting. And Alice gave our fellow committee members just sort of a brief overview of the situation at 77 Water Street. So Okay, Matt, I see you're on as well. Cheers. So Ezra or Matt, if you guys have, now would be a really good time to sort of explain to the committee, I think what you put in your email, which was, how the jurisdiction among the agencies work when it relates to modifications or upgrades to arcades versus, plazas and infills.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to speak to that, and it's good timing as well because I actually have a unexpected work-related emergency. So I'd like to definitely get stuff that I can speak to most directly out of the way up front.
Okay.
So regarding 77 Water, there was also a plaza design change application that applicants have decided to put on hold. Basically, they say they're do it anymore, not going to pursue it. We've asked them whether they want it terminated or withdrawn, which are like technical terms for us for like ZAP purposes, and haven't heard back yet. So our assumption is that when they say we're no longer pursuing this project, they mean it. But I think that it could also be that they're leaving that door open. But so the plaza design change no longer happening. That is as a standalone application. We called it 37625, like a design change certification, and those are chairperson certifications that don't get referred out. The community board typically sees POPs that either require, maybe it was like originally granted as part of a special permit and the special permit needs modification, or as you're very familiar with, open air cafes and with Water Street arcade infill texts, projects like the one that you guys saw previously with 25 Water. Those, it's written in there that they require referral to the community board as well as a council member. So not all POPs necessarily get referred to the community board. I think that, something that, I was talking to Alice earlier, and I think it's very reasonable to tell applicants who have an application with us for a POP related change that doesn't have a referral to speak to the community, to go out to the community, because I think that you very, understandably have a sharp eye for what's going on in your neighborhood, and you have a trove of the city's most precious public spaces and most interesting ones. And I understand the consternation about the arcade portion of 77 Water being the construction going on in it, the disappearance of the art spaces. But before I continue, I'll feel free to ask any more pointed questions if you want.
Well, I guess the real concern is, at least from my perspective, is there a way that an applicant can game this and then segment their projects where they have effectively done this much work, made it look a certain way, then come back renew their plaza upgrade application and say, well, why would you object? It's going to match, something like that. I mean, it just seems like they're segmenting the backdoor approvals and maybe found successfully a loophole. I don't know, but
I think that's very much, I'm gonna second jump here before you answer that, because when they came about their plaza modification in association with last time, it was about a full arcade, everything. It was a holistic plan that they got a lot of, I'll call it feedback from Community Board 1. So I find it a wise choice on their part to segment the process so they can actually minimize the public feedback. But that doesn't serve the public good in the way that it should.
Can I ask
agree.
a question
Oh,
also?
sorry, go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about this, but I'm just curious because I don't know if you were one of the people reviewing the plaza plans that go back to 2021. that the plaza plans overlapped with the arcade in a way where literally there was a bridge, right, that went from one space to another. And I just don't understand how Department of City Planning didn't recognize that as a trigger to review the plaza as well. That was the part that made no sense to me. Both the original design, the AEBI design, and the MML, the current landscape architect's design, both, if I'm not mistaken, bridge between the two spaces in their design, which makes sense. So how did that not trigger the need to have the review and, you know, some community engagement on it? Do you know what I'm talking about? There's a pond, a water source and a bridge that was in both sides, I thought. Of, you know, the plaza and the arcade.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just quickly pull up the plans. I don't know if the team is or the community board is aware, but the presentation that was made by, I believe it was Vishan in 2021, that vicinity, they changed up their design team. It might have been even turnover in ownership, and they came back with different lawyers, different architects, and possibly again different ownership. So the design changed at that point. I was only assigned on this project in May, basically, at which point there was a design that was being reviewed. So I guess
What design was that? If we may ask, so it
That's
wasn't the
the-
2021 design?
correct. It was not the 2021 design. There was a
Could
new
we see
design.
that design? Can you share that design with the public? I mean, is there
Yeah,
something?
yeah.
Because it would help.
Yeah,
us
I believe it's
understand what's
filed.
going on. You have it?
Yeah.
That's, you can present now?
Let me just see if it's publicly facing, but given that they're, you know, saying that they don't want to pursue the application, I don't have any qualms sharing with your team what they were proposing. Hold on. But at that point, basically, this was all at the stage of technical review, and the design itself had been, you know, like said sufficiently that it was good enough to move to like more technical review. Hold on. But just a point that, you know, Alice, we discussed, but just for everyone else's, you know, edification, arcades are not supposed to have any obstructions in them. The, you know, arcade as it existed before, you know, certain renovations and demolition of, you know, amenities began, that, you know, the beloved arcade could not be built today, and it technically shouldn't have been able to be built at the time. It was a bit of a different era, and, you know, as far as Department of Buildings and approvals of items that didn't go through DCP were that back in the day, both plazas and arcades didn't require DCP oversight. An applicant could file these as right with DOB. And arcades are supposed to be obstructionless. There's not supposed to be any kinds of items allowed in there, whether it's benches, or water features. But I do want to briefly circle back on, I think it was Tammy's point about the, you know, the concept of like the loophole here. And again, we totally agree about, you know, wanting these spaces to serve the public good here. Yeah, we can only deduce at this point because we're still in the process of talking to DOB, but and talking to the DOB plan examiners. We have a very good relationship with folks who do enforcement, but it's a separate group from those who, you know, review a plan and approve it. And it is possible that, you know, as was presented to you with this kind of holistic design between the arcade portion and the plaza portion, they may have filed it with DOB in a similar fashion, in a way that allowed them to get a work permit while they were still, you know, going through the formal application process with DCP.
Were you able to pull it up by any chance, just so we sort of know?
Still hunting for it.
That familiar, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can, it's probably easiest just to like send you whatever the revised design was following the meeting.
Ezra, I'm happy if you have it to make you a presenter.
Hold on one second. Okay, so this is publicly available. So hold on one second. Let me see. I mean, these are technical drawings. It's definitely not something we would typically do to like pull something up out of an application and go through it, but they did file it. So this is up on the ZAP portal. And that was just their most recent design. So hold on one second.
And why wasn't that shared with the community board? Those
Um, Because they're not required to. It is a straight design change that doesn't involve like, you know, enclosing an arcade for, let's say, you know, retail uses like 25 water, or doesn't involve an open air cafe. There's no required referral to the community board or notification. Now, again, I think that this speaks to, you know, what you and Tammy were emphasizing about, you know, these are important spaces. It is important for applicants and developers to, if they have proposed changes, to speak to the community board to keep, you know, to keep you in the loop and to allow you to, you know, to opine on. I'm having trouble with the actual file itself. Give me one second.
Department City Planning is not responsible for advising the community board of these things. It's supposed to be, it's only the developer, is that how it works?
In this case, since there's no like referral requirement, if these, when, let's say when an applicant does file with us, they would be it would be posted publicly on that project's like ZAP portal. So the community board could, you know, see this new project at 77 Water Street, let's say, pop up, and there, you know, you're welcome to ask us, hey, what's the deal with this application? And we're happy to fill you in. And if, you know, the community board wanted to discuss it, that would be something that we would encourage the applicant to do with you, because it's their project. You know, we don't like present on private applications. The applicants technically carry the water for that, but you know, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just I'm a little frustrated because I do feel though that we had this opportunity to save the space, that in January, I wrote, you know, the Department of City Planning and said, there seems to be work being done in this area. And I guess the response was, well, basically, it's okay, it's as of right. But at that point, one would have thought that the department would have advised the community of this major impactful demolition of almost 10,000 square foot space on Water Street. It just is sort of unfathomable that acknowledgement of what was happening didn't sort of identify itself to you as, or not you, but the department, as something that folks should know about, whether it's the Municipal Art Society. We have Elizabeth Goldstein that's joined us tonight. I just think that seems so counter to what I would hope is the role of DCP in the oversight for these spaces. And I'm sort of frustrated by that, obviously, and want to understand how that should have worked so that we didn't lose a space without more review.
No, of course, and understandable. I was not aware of the arcade demolition. The applicants did not communicate this to us. The plans that, you know, were filed. So the first, for example, for me as a team leader on this, the first that I'm coming to the project and looking at, and they're actually the first plans that were filed by this new design team. They basically show the arcade space or anything adjacent to the plaza as being like out of the bounds of the project area. So we had, you know, we were not alerted that they were planning to renovate the arcade space. Now it's possible that, you know, they had made us aware in 2020, 2021, whenever it was that the previous design team and legal team came into us. You know, they might have said then that this is part of a holistic like look at the space, but we were also as surprised as you that the space was being enclosed and parts were being demolished. And again, you know, when we were looking into it, it's outside of, because we had also, you know, had concerns when we were alerted that is the applicant also like building out a plaza design that hasn't been approved yet, that's still like very much under review. And the applicant said that we're not making any, you know, renovations to the plaza. And, you know, an arcade again is something that they could go straight to DOB and apply to change.
Hey, Ezra, can I just add to that a little bit?
Yeah.
This is Eric Harrison. I'm the POPs program manager at DCP. And from my conversations with DOB, I think a lot of the work is related to waterproofing the arcade areas, and there's some leaking happening in the pools that needed to be addressed. So a lot of the scope of the work in the arcades, at least, is to repair subsurface conditions. And we're in the process with DOB to find out more about the extent of the scope of work. As far as we're aware, you know, they aren't proposing any changes to the plaza except for where there's a boundary with the pool that they need to kind of get to that subsurface condition. So yeah, we can follow up with you all about, you know, how our conversations go with DOB, but I think that the waterproofing was a big aspect of the work being done.
Yeah, it sort of doesn't answer the bigger question as to how you can do all this modification without any oversight really of your department. So yes, we've been waiting for over a month for the follow-up on it. I think it would be great to get to the bottom of it. And I guess the key question that I guess we're all learning here, which was news to me, is that you can modify any arcade space, privately owned public arcade space, with absolutely no oversight by the Department of City Planning. Is that correct? That only goes through the Department of Building.
Yeah, there's no mechanism in the zoning that requires DCP review. And also the design requirements for arcades is very minimal, right? The circulation spaces, there's dimensional requirements. Like Ezra said, there should be free of any obstructions, you know, the primarily for circulation. So it's a very low, in terms of the review of the space, it's a very low lift, and DOB are the ones in charge. That's, you know, they were created as of right, and they're one of the few POPs. They might be the only POPs that continue to be as of right in terms of changes made to them.
You recognize that, of course, 77 Water is certainly not a thoroughfare, as are many of the arcades that are being used for infill for retail. So just to keep that in mind, you know, as you know, obviously it's a bit different, but I hear you, and thank you for that response.
And we agree too that it, you know, we'll be finding out more about what shape the space will take on the other side of these renovations. But, you know, we do recognize that it's, you know, a particularly beautiful and beloved space, and it's not every POPs that gets to have multiple art pieces in it. So, you know, we definitely understand and empathize with the community board's consternation on this.
Well, thank you, but can you also find out, I know we talked about this earlier too, can you find out about what came of the art, where the art is, and what is intended with the art? Is that something that your department can find out, or where do we go to get that information, those 5 pieces of art?
We can ask the representatives if they can tell us. It's probably the I mean, Eric might be able to answer better, but I don't know if DOB has any kind of procedures in terms of like where things have to be stored. It's like a building management type of issue. So we will email the applicant reps for them and ask, because, you know, it's of concern to the community.
All I can say is that we followed this closely since 2016 when we were given this wonderful Water Street text amendment, which we're now reviewing tonight, to reconsider. But I have to say, we asked so many times, and it's nice to meet Eric for the first time, but we've asked for quarterly updates for years. And we really, you know, feel like this is not something that we should have to have learned by walking by the space and seeing it demolished. And so I just hope that from this unfortunate moment, we can have these quarterly updates and really be provided with real updates, like we're hopefully getting tonight on 175 Water, to know what is going on in our community with our privately owned public spaces, which are beautiful in many cases and really critical to the community. So with that, I'll get off my soapbox, but I would go.
Here's a fun question before you end the soapbox.
Oh,
Do we know if the plane is still, and the grass on the roof is still there
yeah, I don't know.
for 77 Water?
Yeah, it's the what's it called? The Camelot plane or whatever, the
Yeah.
plane on the top.
Do we know anything about that, gentlemen?
I don't know. I'm not aware of anything.
Well, it would be great to find that out. That was a great, no, you couldn't see it. It was
No.
very hard to go, but yeah.
It's a World War I fighter plane at the top.
Yeah. Okay, we'll follow up on that. And also, we do as well rely on, the community's eyes and ears on these, because if 77 Water Street had not, come into us for a plaza design change, we would have had, no idea about what was happening to the arcade, because again, that's something they can apply to DOB with, and DOB is not obligated to let us know that something had been filed. So we appreciate, the eagle eyes on these.
Well, and therein lies the problem. And so when we now review the text amendment again, that is something that I think we should all work together on seeing change. And I hope that you'll be sensitive to that idea as we consider it.
But it's not just limited to Water Street, right? This problem
No.
exists in any arcade outside those buildings that may fall within the purview of the Water Street zoning section. So isn't it a bigger problem that should be addressed in some way? And if so, DCP reps, without your city folks, well, what's the best way to do that? Is that legislation? Is that some interagency rule? How do we handle it?
Yeah, that's right. It is a citywide applicability, for arcades across the city. I think on the short term, we could request DOB notify us of these types of applications. They already track POPs in their own internal database. And if there are compliance issues that they come across, they do let us know. But for the most part, it is just within their court. They review it, they approve it. In the long term, I think we're talking about, adding in a new action into the zoning, which is a zoning text amendment that would require some level of oversight from DCP. But keeping in mind the arcade spaces, the text is very minimal. So adding in, another layer of review for spaces that should be complying with dimensional and height and width requirements, we could certainly look at it.
Only if there were a recent citywide zoning text amendment opportunity to have done so.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I appreciate that you guys can maybe make that happen without a zoning text amendment. That would be great. Would you need, one second, would you need a resolution? Would it help rather to have a resolution from the community board to that effect to help you achieve what you want to achieve with DOB absent a zoning text amendment?
Yeah, I think
That's
that always helps the cause. Yeah, like as I said, we have an open line of communication with DOB, and we're always working to improve our POPs enforcement processes. This is kind of I personally work with the enforcement team quite a lot, and not so much with the plan examiners and the reviewers of applications. But I think we can absolutely work with them to open up a line of communication and create a kind of feedback loop.
Okay, so put a pin in that and have our committee come back to, everything okay with that? Have our committee come back to that in a moment, but we want to hear from, is it Elizabeth Goldstein? You can unmute, Elizabeth.
Thank you. I appreciate your indulgence, and I know that this is it's sort of an inappropriate place for me to have a voice, but I appreciate your allowing it. I guess I'm a little bit confused, Eric and Ezra, about the relationship of this arcade to the intention of the text revisions for arcades, which certainly spoke to infill, but the reason that they existed and there was a discussion about this at all in 2016, before my time at MAS, let me be clear, so was because they were not functioning well as normal arcade space, right? And there was this whole idea that they needed to be activated and the infill was to be allowed because it would activate these spaces. And so I'm a little bit confused by, and there were changes to the text amendment that actually required a 45-day review at the community board level as these infill and other kinds of changes to activate these arcade spaces were intended. And so I'm a little bit surprised that along Water Street, I'm not talking about arcades in other places, I'm talking about arcades along Water Street, which was a subject of a revised text amendment at city planning that was deliberated at great length, how this slipped through that net. Because it seems to me that arcades along Water Street, because of this text amendment, should be coming to you for review under any circumstances, given this change and how they actually function differently than arcades in the rest of the city. So I'm a little bit bewildered by why this didn't get caught or reviewed or looked at in that way. And I understand the demolition was a surprise, but what I'm really asking is, why weren't they required to come to you, period? Because they were substantially changing an arcade along Water Street potentially.
So, first, agreed, and the irony is not lost on us that a text that was intended to activate what were, termed underperforming spaces. We ended up with one of the most beloved and active spaces, being renovated. Let me see. I think that it may be possible that, hold on one second. No, yeah, it is. Yeah, so 77 Water Street is part of the Water Street text amendment because it wasn't, I mean, I agree. I think that the bigger picture is that shouldn't any change to an arcade in this space for which we put an extreme amount of attention to detail and long discussions, a robust public review process, shouldn't any arcade, if it's being changed in any way, have some form of review? The reason that it didn't have community board review or DCP review is because they weren't enclosing it to create retail. And so the degree to which the mechanisms in the Water Street text amendment were circumscribed is if you want to fill it in for retail as opposed to modify it. There's also other provisions around events and things like that, but they, if they had chosen to put a curtain wall of some kind around the ground floor and enclose it, it would have had to come to us. But in this case, yeah, it was treated like any other arcade essentially in the city, even though in reality it is not in terms of its, qualitative value and history.
Do you know if they've retained any of the art in terms of the candy store, or any of the pieces? Where has all of that gone?
Yeah, we do not know, but we can ask the applicant's representatives.
Can I just add to that, Ezra, in response to Elizabeth, that there are mechanisms if the owner wanted to change, if they wanted to reduce POP's area, they're not able to do that as of right. That requires a city planning action. The as of right work, is really to facilitate easy upkeep and maintenance and doing things like waterproofing. And if they're replacing it as it is, they can do that with outdoor regular plazas as well. They could seek a building permit from DOB just to replace materials in kind. And that's the same as arcades. If they wanted to change the shape of an arcade or reduce Pop's area in any way, that would require a chairperson certification from city planning. So it's not to say that they can just do whatever they want and they can create whatever they want and change the, you know, holistically the design of the arcade. That's not completely accurate, but they are allowed to do certain types of work to replace and put back things as they were as of right, which is left out of the Water Street text altogether.
Right, and I will ask the committee's indulgence to just add that the point here is that this is a little bit of a Trojan horse, yeah, and that what's happened here is very inconsistent with what should have been reviewed, and especially because of the integrated nature of the plaza and the arcade. If nothing else, just to make sure that whatever was happening with the plaza was consistent and in fact uniform and was just a maintenance item. Anyway, you know, we can talk about this offline further, but I guess I feel like, and I appreciate, Ezra, your point that this, but I'm just reinforcing it. It seems like it slipped by in a category it should not have been in.
100%.
Yeah, no, 100% understood. And we're absolutely happy to continue these conversations as well, because you know, on the heels of, you know, the discussions around 60 Wall Street and now this space, you know, we think that you know, it's important to be in dialogue about the pops in these areas. And I think that honestly, you know, it's not been typical policy for DCP to notify the community boards if there's an upcoming project that doesn't have referral, but we can have open channels of communication about that for when applications come in, and especially if, you know, it's like relatively early on, and we're happy to tell the applicants that they should, you know, go do a road show with the community board and you know, allow for their input.
I just want to say, Ezra, that last month I had asked for just that when you came before us with 25 water, and the landscape architects were the same ones who are doing this plaza, or so the website says. We asked them to come back. That was exactly what we spoke of. And had that happened and had there been some follow through, we might not have seen the demolition of this space so quickly. So I just point out that, you know, we have for many years asked about 77 Water Street. I'm not sure how we can be more emphatic on the need to be, you know, fully engaged here, but just last month this was asked of the department. So I don't know how we do better, but I just want to point that out. And thank you, Elizabeth, for underlining all of the major issues here.
And I mean, I think oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think because we asked, it is not lost on me the irony that the DOB permit that they filed at 77 Water is for landscaping. On the DOB, that's what they're calling it. So I think there definitely needs to be better discussion, dialogue, and communication. This is not landscaping in the way that we consider anything that I've ever seen. But yeah.
Are there other folks online? You know, here we have public, but anybody else who wishes to hear a question on this? Okay, seeing none, why don't we get an update on 175 Water, and then we can come back to, but so it would be a quick and affirmative vote on a resolution to support our friends at DCP to have conversations and get whatever information they need from DOB in a situation like this. So I guess Ezra or whomever might wish to update us on 175 Water. That was one other one that we asked about specifically.
Sure, happy to. So it is, and this is again the kind of conversations that, you know, we are saying, like, to be frank, we should be having, you know, earlier in the process, because this is an early in the process application, very, very early. And so we're happy to, discuss the proposal with you and answer any questions. There are two components to it, one of which is they would like to add an additional story to the roof for amenity space for commercial tenants. They are keeping this as an office building. They're trying to reposition it. It actually is a finalist for the grant of a subsidy that was created for office buildings that are looking to, reinvest significantly in their space. And I don't know enough about the way of IDA's procedures. That's the Industrial Development Agency, but they're the ones who grant tax abatements. And I believe it was voted in the affirmative for it to be awarded this. So they are investing in making it a premium commercial office building. When we talk about what's called the quote unquote flight to quality, that a lot of class A and class A plus office buildings are not having particular tenancy issues. This building is wholly vacant at this point, which probably folks can see on the ground as well. So part of it is a vertical enlargement by a story to add tenant amenity space. And then on the ground level, they are undertaking one of the Water Street text amendment arcade infills to create retail and like food court type space on the ground floor, an area that's currently like arcade overhang. So this is a similar type of application to 25 Water Street. I would say that a key difference here is that, well, one, they're not applying for an open air cafe, but by virtue of applying for this arcade infill, it requires, as Elizabeth noted, a referral period to the community board and council member. So this will be formally coming your way when it's far enough along. It is, again, everything that we've seen is like conceptual at this point. So it is quite early, but 25 Water Street was, they updated their design and of the plaza, but they, technically speaking, their compensating amenity requirements had been met by a prior redesign. Some folks could argue, and I would be sympathetic, that it was probably a bit of an underwhelming redesign previously that was done. But basically, the text states that if you had, I think it was like since 2011, if you had undertaken a design change to the space, which requires, an upgrade to greater accordance with the plaza standards, that serves in lieu of your compensating amenity. But for most spaces under the Water Street text, the compensating amenity would be a more full-throated redesign of the space and being held to a higher standard of compliance with the plaza regulations. So this application differs in that it's going to have to meet the higher bar of design standards for the public space, the plaza space that remains.
So I'm just gonna talk about the MCOR grant that they, yes, it's a 20-year tax abatement, but it's money that's awarded with no guarantee that they have to actually do the work. So we would really, for use of public dollars like that, it'd be really important that we have dialogues and conversation with them. They have been doing some work on that building on and off, so it's not unknown to us. There's been rebranding at that building in terms of addresses, community conversations with the neighbors who live immediately behind it. So the building is not unknown to us. And I share that my understanding is that they were renaming it, and renumbering it, and we have done a walkthrough with, at the time, the owners. So if the owners have changed since that time, which was early last year, that'd be great to know. But either way, it's not like they don't know the community board. So I'm a little distressed that they didn't have a dialogue with us. And whether it's through their lobbyist or who also well knows the community board. Either way, I'm not sure how we develop relationship early in the dialogue versus later in the dialogue. And especially when they were just awarded public dollars from a city who is budget crisis, not collecting taxes for 20 years. You know what I mean?
We'll tell them right after this meeting to come to CB1 to outreach with you. We can't force them to because it will be referred at, after an application is filed. I will note that it is early in this process, and there was a change in land use attorney team, and I believe a change in architects from last year. So this is kind of starting anew for us. I don't know the degree to which the design changed between them because I haven't been able to have access to the prior iteration of it. For example, the prior iteration, which you were referring to like last year, that
Exactly.
like a larger, that envisioned a larger vertical enlargement, which was abandoned. And again, if they have a new landscape architect, I'm going to guess that the design changed. I don't know enough about ownership to know whether it's also turned over owners since then. But like, I mean, I have some schematic
Are they still
drawings that
calling it the Water Street Associates,
let me check quickly on the
WSA?
yeah, hold on. Unless Matt, you have that pulled up, I will check quickly online. Pardon me.
And going from 175 water to rechanging the numbers 161 to 169, I believe was also in that dialogue.
In terms of like the project's kind of like address and title.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that would be news to me as well. It's still been framed to us as 175 Water Street. But let me just quickly check on the owner.
Yeah, thus far, I mean, like Ezra was saying, it is early on, but there has been no indication thus far from the applicant rep that the address name would change, but we could certainly ask if that's something that is still being considered.
So 175 Water Street owner LLC is the current owner, and let me see if we have records of the prior iteration.
Not sure how.
Can Alice ask her question in the meantime?
Oh,
I just want to
yeah.
talk about this. So we haven't yet received as a board. First of all, can you just for 1 second just back up and there's a lot of players here talking about POPs. So you have Ezra and Matthew and Eric. So when we're wanting to talk to someone about our situations with POPs in Lower Manhattan, who is the point person on any of these questions generally? Could you just, how do you guys oversee this work?
The three of us are all the point people, plus we have another planner who works on the POPs team named Milka Solomon. And the four of us basically are having to discuss every POPs change that comes through DCP's purview, at least. But Eric is the guru of all things POPs. He as the senior program manager, and having a pretty encyclopedic knowledge of them. There are 500 and some pops, I believe, in the city overall, and changes to all of them go through Eric.
Okay, that's very helpful. So I guess we would be, sort of emailing you all, just to specifically, I guess, to Eric or to whomever would know the answer to this. 170 Wide Water in the Water Street text amendment, there was this is a building that's specified with a required alternative improvement. And it has something to do with the minimum depth along Front Street and identifying that the open area along Front and the remaining arcade area shall be considered one contiguous public space and shall be accessible to the public at all times. I assume that is somehow going to be identified in this upcoming plan review, but is that something that you're working with? Is that still going to happen? Can you speak to that required alternative improvement? It's a little opaque to me, particularly as we're not looking at any plans. It looks like a very tiny area. Can you expand on that at all?
Yeah, hold on. I mean, we have begun discussions on this because it helps us to understand what is the full like square footage and dimensions of the area that is required to be upgraded, because that also influences the linear feet of seating that need to be provided, the square footage of planters that need to be provided. It tracks directly with amenities. So, Eric, do you mind taking that one for 2 seconds?
Yeah, sure. So the required improvement area, is the ground floor outdoor plaza space that the majority of it is along Front Street. And it does have limited frontage along Water and Front as well. It's a rectangular shaped plaza at this early stage, and there's a little bit more wiggle room at the corner of John and Front where the building is kind of tapers back. And they're retaining that entrance as one of their primary entrances. So at this stage, that basically the leftover area from post infill, all along those 3 streets are the required open space, the required improvement. However,
How many square feet is that, Eric? Sorry to interrupt.
I don't have the figures in front of me right now, but we can follow up. I don't know if Ezra and Matt have the figures there.
I can look them up. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, and I can pull up a screen grab.
We need a follow-up where we're looking at the plans, that we see what we're looking at. It's a beautiful building, a beautiful frontage. It would be lovely that remained all open. I'm not an advocate for seeing that as infill myself personally, but it was worked beautifully as a cafe for many years. But that said, it will go. So let us know how it's going and whatever small input we could have on this wedge of space that will be left to us. It looks like it's a 15-foot depth. I don't know, that's my calculation.
I think it's the minimum of 15 feet, so that's, I think that it's noting that at its smallest dimension, but our interpretation is that, what extends beyond 15 feet is, needs to be treated like plaza area. It's not just looking for a thin strip. And, as part of the alternate improvement, because I was just quickly looking at the text, it's basically just saying that, they're trying to specify the dimensions and locational portions that would then need to comply with the plaza regulations for plazas in the Water Street area. I think because some of these plaza areas are like shallower than plazas elsewhere in the city, the requirements, the standards were tweaked just slightly to make compliance with them possible for some of these plaza spaces, which might only be like 30 feet deep. So yeah, basically the required compensating amenity is an upgraded plaza in accordance with section 91.832. And the alternate improvement piece is just laying out the parameters for what counts as the plaza area to be upgraded.
So I guess assuming time allows, let's say the next land use committee, if our chair, Patrick Cannell, allows it, can you come then to give us 170? I assume that was happening today, but we can see 175 water and review it, because we're seeing the same thing happening where it's early in the game. It was early in the game for 77 water. We looked at it in 2021, and in 2024, it was demolished. So, you know, I don't know.
I think the goal is that as soon as they get off this call, they're gonna ask the applicant's current team,
To come in and.
if that land use council has not changed, I'll also ask that team come in and present, and sooner rather than later. Change, we may not have much direct contact, but,
Yeah, we'll tell them to come speak to you. And my understanding is that it is a new attorney team as well.
okay, then that would be better coming from you guys anyway. Are
Yeah.
there, also on our agenda, are there other POPs that are being reviewed now in the district? Or coming down the
Yeah.
pipeline?
There are, I mean, I'd say that 175 water is the most prominent example of an application that will be coming to the community board. There is, I believe, a plaza reduction for portions of a plaza that for which no bonus was ever generated for 160 Water Street. Does that sound correct, Eric?
That would be, I think the one you're talking about is 88 Pine Street.
Oh, I know the 88 Pine is coming as well. I thought that 160 Water is a reduction cert.
160 Water Street is just a straight design change. So
Design change.
yeah.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, they're proposing design changes to an existing plaza. It's that kind of semi-sunken by a couple stairs, barren space at 160 Water Street. And then
On Fletcher Street?
yes, that's the one. Yeah, it's kind of a, you know, windswept blank plaza at the moment, and they're proposing upgrades to that.
So when can we see that?
So that one, because it's a straight design change certification, there is no community board or council referral required. They're not seeking an arcade infill with that particular project. They were at one point, but they withdrew that aspect of the project. So it's straight chairperson Dan Garodnik's signature on the design changes that it complies with today's design standards and greater accordance.
We can share the filed materials with you, and we can tell the applicant, you know, that they should consider doing a roadshow. Again, because there's no referral, we can't compel them to, but we can. The materials are publicly available online, but we can also just share them for, you know, expediency.
Yeah, that one was filed recently, so they are available on Zap.
Okay, then moving farther south, you mentioned 88 Pine?
Back to 160 is a residential conversion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes.
Yeah, 88 Pine, we've been talking with their land use council about they want to add a vestibule to the entrance, the main entrance of the building. Right now, the vestibule they have is not up to energy code compliant, and they wish to kind of extend the vestibule into the POPs along Water Street. I think it was about 300 or 400 square feet into the POPs. And this was another question, because they're removing non-bonused plaza area. There's also a layer of BSA approvals on that POPs particularly. And they are seeking, you know, we're in discussions with them about the mechanism and the approval process, whether it's solely DCP review or if it's a layer of DCP with BSA, you know, kind of weigh in on whether or not it affected the original findings for the building.
Good.
So when will that come?
But we
Again?
saw that.
No, we didn't. It was,
We did.
They deferred to come back to us. They were gonna, not pull their BS application, but they were just gonna hold it, until the lawyer, who I think was stuck in Florida, could come back in April and present to us in person with some better drawings, because we were faced with some, challenging visuals, let's say. But it sounds like in the meantime, a little, for lack of a better term, turf war has ensued between DCP and BSA, or maybe in terms of who's the right agency to deal with the applications components, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. The BSA layer is, adding a little bit of a kink in the terms of the approval process. So we're in the process of discussing the application with them, and yeah, I believe we've been talking to the same land use lawyer. It could be Fred. Yeah. So as soon as we have some, an update,
So
we
with
can
that one-
provide that.
With that one, they've been before us, we would, whether they're required to or not.
Okay.
Appreciate that nothing go forward unless we give it an opportunity to at least receive that presentation again.
Yeah, I just want to ask on 88 Pine, whether or not, Eric, there is any work that's being intended to be done to the plaza to the south. It's not 88 Pines Plaza, but I've forgotten the name of the building now.
Yeah.
But the one that has the 3 sculptures in the water feature.
Right. No,
there any
there's no work being proposed for that. They wish to, leave it unchanged, continue as is.
Just strikes me strange. They're going to take away sidewalk space allegedly for environmental controls on doors that already exist there. There are, first we were told that it was about accessibility, but there are 4 handicapped accessible doors on that facade, if I'm not mistaken. So now we're building out onto the street, taking street, and we're getting not even that very lovely sculpture garden that could well use some maintenance upgraded in any way, or maintained, or spruced up. I mean, don't you think that would be a fair exchange? I'm not sure I understand what the public is getting. They're getting doors that are going to take away sidewalk space. But I don't know. I'm just curious where you're coming from on that application.
Yeah, I mean, with the reduction certs, because they have excess bonus that they haven't utilized, they're, they can apply for this to remove Pops area without a compensating amenity because they haven't utilized the full bonus that was generated by the public space. So I think that's the case with this one. If that wasn't the case and they had utilized 100% of their bonus, that would require a compensating amenity to be provided by taking away Pops area. But because they have an excess of, I can't recall what it is now, but it might be just within what they can do in terms of removing, a sliver of Pops, a portion of Pops.
But can DCP say, no, we don't approve of this? Or who ultimately makes that call? Is it Brodnick that says, no, we're not letting, even though you can take the space as of right, you're saying, we don't think it's a great idea? I mean, I don't know, where does that end?
Yeah, that would be the chair's, I guess, it would
It's a tricky one.
land on his desk, and
It lands on his desk, but with chair certifications, there's, they're called ministerial actions, and there's actually very limited leeway to make any discretionary changes or modifications if an application is deemed to meet the criteria laid out in zoning. So it's much more like a checklist, and if they have technically met those findings, I like it lands on Dan's desk, but there's not really any flexibility to turn it down based on that.
So are you leaning towards the allowance of having the sidewalk space taken?
Well, I guess, again, I'm not as close to the application as Eric is, but if a plaza reduction certification is approved, it would allow the applicant to, to treat the formerly plaza area, to potentially, in this case, like enclose it with the doors. It's treated then like it would be just residual space for the building. But again, that action can only apply if they never used the bonus. Let's say that, they want to do the same thing and they did use the bonus that was associated with that area. Then that would be a special permit. That would require full ULURP. There would be a lot of discussion on it. They'd have to meet very, very high standards. The findings are not easy. There's only been one application that successfully applied under those provisions. So there's a very big substantive difference between reducing plaza area that's technically in excess of what is required for their bonus because they technically never utilize a bonus, and that for which a bonus has been granted and used. And because we, if you are providing a public amenity in order to get private gain in terms of floor area, we monitor that very closely. And Water Street text is relatively exceptional in the way it works with those arcade infills.
Okay, other ones that you guys know about?
Yeah, there's a renewal of the special permit for 105 Duane Street that will be coming to you relatively soon. Renewals for special permits get referred comparatively early on in the process.
Right.
So they only recently came to us, submitted materials, and I would imagine that it'll be on your desk by next month. There's no design change certifications associated with it this time. It's just a renewal of the special permit that basically modified certain sections of the POPs text to accommodate an as-built condition. So it was more of like a legalizing a condition, but this is also the applicant will be giving you a full presentation on it because, referral is required, and then it will come back to the commission for approval.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, there's a project at 55 Church Street that is very early in the process, but when they have anything to file, that'll be publicly available, and they will be coming to the community board for a open air cafe. So the whole package will get referred when that's ready. I don't know when that point will be. I would assume it won't be for a while, given that it's quite early. But that's one as well.
That's the Millennium. Yeah.
That's the Millennium Hotel.
Oh, right.
All right.
Thank you.
90 Washington Street has been kind of, the applicant has been MIA on that for a while, but there is technically an active application for similarly a design change certification, but also a open air cafe. So that will come to you if they end up filing, which I can check in with the project manager and team leader on that. There are so many POPs and POPs applications at any given time that they are spread out amongst our team. So this is one that I'm aware of, but I'm not as closely plugged into, for example, because it's assigned to a different team leader and different planner, to get them experience working on POPs and CD1.
Maybe I should just ask it this way. How many more?
Yeah, let's see. We just went over at least 4. Let me take a look. I mean, again, at any given time, especially, Eric, like, how many would you say, how many POPs applications are active at any given time? It's a lot.
In CB1 or just generally citywide?
Yeah, citywide.
We'll take the whole city on next month.
Citywide, anywhere between 35, 40 active applications.
Just for
CB1.
RCB, sorry.
Only RCB, please.
Apologies on that one.
Okay, CB1, I would say right now we have, I don't know, 6 to 8 actively moving. And then at any given time, there's half a dozen that are either on hold or that have been quiet on the applicant's end that aren't moving. So I think right now we have 6 to 8. I'm just pulling up the exact spreadsheet right now. But it's of the workload of the portfolio citywide, it's anywhere between 30 to 40% of the portfolio, and CB5 is the other one with a high number of POPs.
Okay. You guys can look that up. I want to keep our meeting moving along because we're already an hour plus in. Thank you guys, for all of that update. Alice has, she promised it's gonna be one last. We're gonna vote on the resolution that we discussed
Yeah.
earlier very quickly. I'll just describe it. It's very straightforward, and then we're gonna move on to the
Okay,
last item.
thanks a lot, Patrick. I just wanted, back to 160 Water Street, I guess this is to you, Eric. I'm a little confused. It's the space to the south you're talking about, that sort of, yeah, recessed corridor, if you will. I don't understand it. That doesn't require any community board review or any review. This is as of right, or that is not an arcade, right? Or is it? I guess I'm confused what that space is. That's not a plaza. What is that space we're talking about?
They have both. They have an
160
arcade.
Water.
Yeah, they have an arcade along Water Street. They also have
Right.
a plaza, a zoning defined 1961 plaza along Fletcher. And that is
That's
the
it.
space that they are, with us upgrading. It's not as of right, so they need chairperson, city planning chairperson certification for design changes that are in greater accordance with today's standards under the zoning design standards. So
So that's a plaza.
yeah, that's the plaza along Fletcher, generated a bonus.
So why wouldn't it come to us to be seen? I thought that that was part of the requirement of the Water Street text amendment, that there was some community board review as referral, no?
Not the arcade.
Not if they're not infilling.
Plaza.
So it's just a plaza design change. They're not electing to infill any of the arcade areas.
But isn't, I think my comment is on the plazas, they're supposed to come to the community board anytime that they're doing an upgrade. At least that's what every other one has done, as far as I remember.
You're saying that unless they're infilling an arcade, they do not have to come to the community board if they're modifying the plaza alone? And not
That's correct.
filling.
That's
an
my
arcade?
understanding. Yeah, that's my
All right.
understanding.
Wait, isn't there a distinction between modifying it and just upgrading it to, and I forget the phrase you just used, to be more substantially compliant with the current zoning?
Right,
Or
because
the
it's
program.
not a required, it's not a required compensating amenity for the infill arcade. They're just electing to make design changes to the plaza. And
Yeah, for projects that are just doing a traditional, what we call a 37-625, which is the generic design change and upgrade provisions. So for like a pre-existing plaza, same as would be in CB5, for example, they would be referred if there was an open air cafe that was being proposed, because that has specific text in it that requires referral. But a standalone design change, even in the Water Street corridor, does not require community board referral. We can
So that
ask
would-
them to.
So that would mean 77 Waters Plaza doesn't have to come to the community board either, because
That's
they weren't
correct.
touching.
We send them in.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. I don't feel.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
So
that's correct.
on the resolution, it'll be therefore be it resolved that CB1 urges the Department of Buildings to provide notice to the Department of City Planning anytime the Department of Buildings receives an application for a plaza work that hasn't gone through the Department of City Planning. And that the Department of City Planning in turn, at least informally advise the community board of that application plan work.
Yep.
Right? Is that what
Yeah.
you?
I mean, I would
intend to
specify
ask?
arcades as well, but it's true that it's covered under plazas, that
Okay,
don't require DCP review, but arcades are definitely the ones where, they can go straight to DOB. And I don't know of really any scenario in which like a plaza, like in, open to the sky plaza can do anything at DOB without coming to us first.
yeah,
There's
thank you.
been
I
some
said
situations
plaza,
where-
not arcade, but right.
Yeah, but applications for certifications for arcade infill and plaza improvements must be referred to the council member in addition to the community board. That was in the Water Street text amendment.
That's right.
But it's not only if they infill, it's both.
That's what my interpretation was.
And the interpretation in the rule is not if it's one and the other, it's either or. It's an and, it's not included with.
Yeah, it would be helpful if you could send along the language that indicates what you're saying, because I guess Tammy and I think others might be a little confused, because my understanding was that if you were modifying a plaza under the Water Street text amendment without an infill of an arcade, but just modifying plaza, that would in fact trigger a review from the board.
But if they don't infill the arcade, it doesn't fall under the Water Street zoning text amendment, it falls under the regular plaza rules. It's only,
Even
that's why we
Even
got,
if it's
we
only,
have that,
right,
we have that additional mechanism because it's Water Street zoning text amendment, which contemplates that it's an arcade infill.
right. And that's a plazas can see this many. Anyway,
Right.
not to belabor things, if you don't mind sending that, because I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm not
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So
clear.
with that, clarification about arcades, men arcades and didn't mean plazas. Does anybody have questions on the resolution? I call the question?
Yeah, second.
Great, all in favor? Aye, is anyone opposed? Anyone recused, any abstentions? We'll assume online that you're a yes unless you say so now.
I see Laura and I see
Hey,
Paul.
Paul, yeah.
Okay, great, and so the record will be clear on the number of votes, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your time. We're gonna, if you have time to hang out, we're gonna talk just briefly about the Water Street zoning text amendment in and of itself. It has, there's been discussion, at the full board level, from folks who just don't like it generally, but also, we've seen over the years, some potential, technical issues with it, and wanted to talk about those. We have George James on the line. I hope he's still with us. To hopefully guide us through it, a bit to some extent. George is also going to be working with us, thankfully, on the remaining City of Yes, application when that comes in. But for the meantime, we're stealing his time to talk about Water Street zoning text amendment. And if changes are, something that we wanted to pursue, how we would do that. So I'm not sure, George, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for being here. Alice, I just sent you 160 and 77's plans. They are on Zap, as Ezra was saying, and I just looked at them and sent them to you. Okay,
Thanks.
yeah, no problem. So my appearance here today is essentially to describe a project as I understand it and get input from you on essentially the evaluation of, what's happened under the Water Street text amendment, how many applications have there been, what kind of changes there have been, and how that has impacted these open spaces, both quantitatively in terms of the amount of space and the type of space that was changed, and qualitatively, changes in design, which, as we're learning, is not necessarily something that comes before you. And so the idea is the first part of this is to gather a lot of information, so that we all come to a common understanding on what's happened. And then I think there's a summary of that information and then a discussion amongst the community board about whether these are good changes or bad changes, or something if you can come to consensus on, whether essentially the changes that were implemented in 2016 are producing the results that you would like to see. I mean, there were, as was stated earlier, it was about activation of these spaces, and is that actually happening? These kind of retrospective zoning exercises aren't done all that often. They should be done more often, in my opinion, because when you make changes to something like this, you think that you know what you're doing and you do your best job and get all the input, but whatever happens on the ground, there may very well be unexpected consequences and situations. And I think, if this meeting today has shown me anything, there's a lack of understanding of exactly when the community board actually is able to provide input to DCP and the chair on the certifications. Now, I'm also aware that certifications are, as Ezra was saying, they're ministerial acts, right? They're as of right. These plazas, and there's not much that can be done, but I think if a problem gets identified, it makes sense to look at it and see what would have to happen to make a change that would affect whatever whatever goal the community board wanted. And so so the idea is to essentially do that fact-finding exercise first, hopefully working with you all. Alice seems to be a font of knowledge on this. I hope to get a little bit of her time, and then see if this is something that that the community board and the Department of City Planning, maybe the community board could do a zoning application for text change if there's something that that they identify, that they could say, oh, this would produce better results. And if it's something that the Department of City Planning could get behind, and get everybody on the same page to produce better results.
Great.
Now, is that your understanding of the project?
And I just wanted to sort of verbalize that for the rest of the committee members so that folks kind of know how this would work. It's one thing for any one of us to say, well, I like this, or I feel that, I don't, you have to get specific. It's a very technical statute to begin with, and if we want to propose changes to it, there's a way to do that, and it's not through just mere legislation. As George said, you have to be an applicant, and somebody has to put that together and put the case together for why our board should support something like that. Oh.
Yeah, thanks a lot, George. I guess I would just, given what we heard tonight and about the specifics of 77 Water, it'd be great if in further discussions on this, you could maybe guide us in what language might be a place where we could change it to attempt to not have what we saw happen here with the demolition of the space.
Absolutely. That's the second phase, right? Is figuring out how you get the text you need to get the results you want, right? But I think, zoning changing zoning is a big deal, right? And it is not, let me just be very clear, as helping Community Board 7 in the last 4 years do their own zoning application, it's a long and difficult endeavor. And so it's good to be systematic about these things, right? And to, to clearly identify the problem or problems, come to consensus that they are indeed problems, and then work with developing solutions to those problems cooperatively with the Department of City Planning.
So next steps, George, obviously
We should also
take care of
say
the
that
administrative piece of it, but go ahead.
we should also mention that part of having a full 180 look at this, obviously, everybody has been shared the Water Street Text Amendment by link from Zach. We also invited the Downtown Alliance, DCP, to really come and talk to us and be a part of the dialogue, because it's very much, we want to hear everyone in the conversation before we make any or not requests for changes. So I need to just lay that out, that we did reach out to the Downtown Alliance. They would come in as we are working on our thought process and be a partner with us, because they are our bid in the neighborhood.
And the Downtown Alliance was the original applicant on 2016 text amendment. So their input isn't.
Yeah, so next steps question.
So in terms of the next step, George, we have the administrative piece with you, which we'll work out with, Tammy and the office and, leadership. That's engaging you formally. And then what do we do next? Do we draw up a list of?
Well,
questions?
I mean, the first thing I would like to do is talk with DCP to see what kind of work they've done, if they've done this sort of analysis, either formally or informally, and so that we're not reinventing the wheel if DCP has already done a lot of this work, and if they haven't, well, then it's going through and pulling each and every one of the applications. I would say you would want to pull the applications whether they're completed or not, so that you can get an understanding of, not only what's happened, but what people have been planning, and then essentially, go through, map them all, try to get down into the this is what you had before, this is what you have now, and measure the changes both quantitatively and qualitatively. Obviously the quantitative parts, the arcade got infilled and there's, X amount of square feet less of space is easier to measure and show than the qualitative aspects of it. But I think, as we've learned here today, I think the qualitative aspect is important to many people. And so you got to do your best to try to figure that out too.
Can I ask something, George? Like in the
Wait,
example of 88, oh, sorry.
Lorna has her hand up.
Can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Well, so I wanted to give some background on the Water Street zoning because my firm was hired by the Alliance years ago to study Water Street because the landlords on Water Street were really concerned about, the World Trade Center commercial space coming online and how that was like gonna suck the, tenants away from dark, windy, hard to reach Water Street and bring it to these tall, bright, new spaces at a transit hub. And so when we were working on Water Street, we realized that actually that not all open space is equal. And this is good George's point about quality of space, that those arcades were dark, they were off-putting to people. We interviewed a lot of people and, they were underperforming as we discussed earlier. And, it seemed that it would provide more value, not just to the landlords, but to the people, the community. We had representatives from the residential community that came to our workshops. We had workers, it was a pretty integrated planning piece of work that we did, and that is where we ended up. So it's not like it was just an arbitrary thing. And what I would argue is if Community Board 1 wants meaningful outdoor space, there's a lot, there's other ways to get it than to be worrying about these dark arcades, especially in a situation where, it's the commercial real estate is so challenged right now.
I was just going to ask George about 88 Pine. That's an interesting case where not all of the FAR was used, right? So there's allowance of taking over some of the sidewalk for these new types of doors for the building, which pushes out the building about around 4 feet all along Water Street. And is there any way that you could see where the amendment would require that if you're going to do that, there would be some give back, again, some amenity that would be provided, or there again, it's just the idea that they have the space, they can take it, and the fact that they're not going to upgrade the plaza that's part of their complex is just tough luck. That to me seems unbelievable that you would allow for, more public space to be taken because they can have the FAR and it doesn't come with anything for the community in exchange. It's just me that in the
yeah.
Well, to that point, Alice, though, we could try to get it offset not on their property, but they could make a donation, let's say, to maintaining the battery or to some of our other open spaces that, I mean, when Wari goes and there's no fundraising for the battery, it's going to be really sad. And so, it would be great if Community Board One could come up with a mechanism for maintaining the big open space that we all use that has sunshine and views that we love and direct our energy that way. I think that would be a really
Fun for
productive-
that, sounds great. Yep, any kind of public fun, that would be good too. Anyway,
Yeah, Alice, I'd have to defer on that. I mean, I don't know. On the surface, it's an as of right bonus, and if you have a plaza that you're not using for the bonus, I think, I'm not sure that you can require anything for it. But we'd have to look into that. But I'm not seeing it, obviously.
no, I hear you.
Richard?
Yeah, first I wanted to ask Laura, were your comments intended to argue against this project with George?
My comments are intended to give background on Water Street, and I'm not arguing for or against a project with George. First of all, I've been trying to find out what this was about, for weeks before the meeting, but it was hard to get the information. But no, my goal is that if we're going to really kind of quibble about our open space, I think we should be strategic about it and have meaningful, usable, try to support the meaningful, usable open spaces that we have, and not, nitpick about these dark marginal spaces on Water Street. I mean, to me, it's not a good use of our energy, really. I just really disagree with it. I don't know, does that answer your question?
It is. I mean, I would say that the way I understood George to describe it, that's exactly what we would try to end up, where we would try to end up. Maximize the kind of usable, desirable space that the community wants.
Can I ask a
See, well, let me just say, like, what I'm trying to argue is that, I think no matter what you do with those arcade spaces, they're not, they're dark and they're windy, and it's, they're in the floodplain. It's a, like if we want meaningful open space, we should be trying to protect the battery. We should be trying to convert the Coast Guard site into a park. We should be taking down the FDR Drive and expanding the resilience project so that it's continuous green space. We should be supporting the places where people want to be in the sunshine with green, and recreation. Like I don't think we should be going after this property on Water Street. I don't think it's a good use of energy. That's all I'm trying to say.
Can I ask a question, Laura? Would you think something more comprehensive in terms of looking at the open spaces and how they've been modified and changed in Lower Manhattan generally would be more valuable?
No, I mean, actually, no. I'm going to say no, because what I'm going to say is we should be putting our energy into getting more space on, like taking down the FDR Drive and getting a real park there and protecting the battery, and not letting all the resilience projects cut off our waterfront when they could be looking at the streets. Like, there's so many tectonic scale issues that we could be focusing on. And it's, like, for me, this stuff is like not, it's like small potatoes compared to the big moves that are really going to impact our community, and we're not focused on that.
Okay.
Got it. Thanks, Laura. Richard had one more question.
I just was wondering, there's a cost estimate for this project?
Not yet. It's part of a larger, but I'm happy to get you that for the next one.
Okay.
Can
I say, like, what I would like to see, and I've talked to Wari about this, is some, she would like to see, some way, if these landlords are wanting variances or other bonuses or, you know, things like that, that they pay into a fund that would benefit our parks. And we don't have that right now. And that, like the first community board meeting when I joined the board, and, you know, the One Wall Street project, we're trying to get around having their outdoor amenity roof space. And that was years ago. I thought we should have like, okay, they don't want to do it, then let them pay into a fund that will benefit all of us. But we weren't able to set that up. To me, if we were, you know, going to engage with George on something like this, that's where I would want to put our energy.
Laura, that's a totally different topic about NIDs and bids that are designed to help revitalize the public space, who pays for it and how it works, as you know. And we can certainly invite Wari in and have Wari lead a dialogue and conversation on that. That's not a problem. She's not the only park in our neighborhood that needs, as you well know, almost every park to be successful these days has to be public partnership. But I mean, it's a question that we can have Wari come in. That's a different topic to the look forward and look back to the text amendment. I hear what you're saying about where you've got, you know, let's talk to Wari and have Wari come in and talk to us about the needs that they have.
That's fine. I mean, I'm not just saying this because of Wari. I'm just saying that, you know, do you know that now, like you can't even design a Pops if it doesn't have sunlight. Like if a Pops is only facing north, you cannot make it a Pops. You would have to get a variance. So I mean, the whole point of the Pops is the ideal thing is like a sunny social space for people that's animated where they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Comfortable. So if it's dark, if it's windy, if it's measly, if it's noisy, if it's all those things, it's like you can do really jazzy, cool stuff to it, but it may never be like it might be better to offset that and put the money into some place that's sunny and has good views to make that better for more people over a longer period of time. That's my point.
How about hearing from others? Anybody else? Thoughts on whether how we attack this at all? Anybody online?
Nobody else hands are up online.
Okay. I mean, I think it's helpful, George, at least whether we do go forward with it or not, is to at least plant the seed. And I think maybe what we can do is have, you know, a further discussion next month if folks want to continue to think about it, and we can make a decision as a committee whether we want to go forward. I guess that would give us time too, from our executive leadership perspective about, you know, how exactly do we do that? Do we have to have the full board's input that we go forward with the project, or is it enough that just the committee has it? But it'll give us some time to think about it in any event. So George, anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's I think thinking about it and coming to consensus it's a good idea.
Okay. Great. Anybody got anything else? Great. So with that, I think we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, George.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Laura.
Bye.